Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Shay with Amos. I'm your host, Jacob Gorgie, and joining me today is I almost said legendary, Tamer Milad.
Not that old.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. It's so hot in here.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous.
It's a very hot day.
We have the AC on and everything. Anyways, let's get started. So, usually in the beginning of these interviews, I ask, let's start from the beginning. When did you come from Egypt to America? Your case, though, you didn't come from Egypt, and you weren't born here. So, Libya, correct, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. You really want to start with that?
Yeah, I'll start with that. Yeah. The beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, they were living in Egypt, and then he had, there was a good job opportunity in Libya. And so he went there, and it just happened that, after he got married, and my mom was going to have me.
Yeah.
And so they didn't come back to Egypt to have me. They just stayed there. And but then I think they moved back to Egypt. And then I came to the U.S. when I was about two and a half, something like that.
Oh, wow. So you came really young.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you were essentially growing up, this is early 70s?
So I was, we'll say late 70s.
Late 70s. Sorry. I don't know ages, okay?
Yeah. I didn't want to say the birth year. Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, confidential. Anyways, but so this at this point, if I remember correctly, this is when we were renting here. Did you guys come straight from here to Chicago?
So my parents, my dad had a sister that was living in Milwaukee. So when we came here, we lived with them, went to the Milwaukee church. Again, I was 2. I don't really remember it much. And until my dad got a job at Sergeant Lundy in Chicago, then we moved to Chicago. And honestly, I don't remember how many years we were in Milwaukee. But yeah, I was still young. I was still under 10, I think.
So then living here in Chicago, what was kind of that period? Because the previous guests we've had, Joe and Ray from this season, also were growing up around the same time. And their kind of premonitions that they were in. Were you, at this point, was there still like super small, like Sunday schools were essentially like 2 classes, or at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it was small. It was small, everything. The church was small. The community was small. The Sunday school was small. I mean, and I'm saying that relative to what we see today.
Yeah.
Right? What we see today is huge, humongous. So it was much, much smaller than that. I don't know the size, but I do remember the church and that we took it from, I don't know if we rented it or we purchased it because I was really young.
Yeah.
I just remember it being very long, sideways.
Oh yeah, so that I think that was the
renovated
one because I think the altar placement.
The altar was different location, and because I never knew that. Someone told me that long after we moved to this church. Oh, that's why that church looked like that. So I'm taking their word for it, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So then, did you then just stay in Chicago for like while you were in the States, or was it kind of like?
So my dad had a lot of quite a few relocation type projects for his work. So we spent a year, I can't remember, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay. Then we spent about a year or so in Alabama, and then a couple years in Korea. Yeah. So and then that was like when I was in 2nd grade in Cincinnati, and then 7th grade, I think, in Alabama, and then high school in Korea.
Yeah. So talking about kind of domestic stuff then, what was kind of, because this is at a time where really there wasn't as many, especially like down south, at least to my knowledge, it wasn't as big as it was as it is now. So kind of what was that experience like moving, I guess, between cities and stuff?
Well, Cincinnati, I don't remember the church or anything about that. I mean, I was in 2nd grade. I just remember my parents got me a big wheel and I loved it. That's about the only memory I have of that move. In Alabama, I remember from a church perspective that they didn't have a big church. In fact, even my parents had liturgy service in their house a few times.
Wow.
So because it was a group of, I don't know, 20 people, 30 people. So it's like an Azuma. The church service. And because they didn't really have anything, my dad also was, he was doing a lot of the responses and stuff, a lot of what we see Atif and doing. So we always joked that like he was the Uncle Atif of Alabama. So, but we always joked about that. In Alabama, I played on a traveling soccer team there too. And seventh grade was, don't I have some fond memories, but when you're switching schools, it's hard, especially at a young age, to make friends very fast. And then by the time you make it, you're losing them.
Yeah.
So seventh grade was a bit hard because you're older. You want to make friends. You don't really have that church community to fall back on. It wasn't a large group, so I don't even remember any kids that I played with from the church or from that community. So that was a hard one.
Yeah.
Seventh grade, I would say, was pretty hard. And I do remember it snowed one time. This was like the first time in I don't know how many years it snowed in Alabama. We were the only car on the road for 3 days. Every other car was either in the ditch.
Yeah.
I remember my parents would pull over and we'd help someone out of the ditch because, from Chicago, we know how to drive in the snow, and they don't have plows or anything. Yeah. So it snows, it stays on the ground, it turned to slush. The whole town was closed for 3 days. We were driving from day one. But, and that's just because, we know that that weather.
And then that kind of leads on to Korea. Like you just said earlier, you moved to Korea, kind of going freshman year of high school, kind of around that time, which is a huge leap, huge. So I guess there's kind of two parts to my question. What was that experience like, I guess, secularly? I can't say that word. Kind of like just growing up, it's kind of things, interesting stuff, especially the Korean War had ended at that point for like, maybe 10, 20 years at that point.
The Korean War was in the back.
So
it wasn't even a factor.
Yeah. So kind of that experience. And also then the spiritual experience, kind of what was that like back then, when there really wasn't a church. But let's start with the secular stuff first.
So it was hard. That's I finished 8th grade and I'm going into high school. And so my dad went there in January. The rest of the family followed up in the summer because of our schools. He didn't want to pull us out. But that was hard because that's my high school years, right? My freshman and sophomore. So I've gotten kind of used to the idea of moving, but it still was hard. I remember even going to his company, and they basically had a Q&A. What do you guys want to know? So we were allowed to ask questions to try to get us to be more comfortable about the move there. But once we got there, it's a whole nother country. It's not anywhere nearly as developed as what you're used to. You don't have a house with green grass and a yard and and 2 floors or a TV. I mean, we had one TV and one channel that was in English.
No.
So you didn't like what was on there. Deal with it. So it was a challenge. The school I went to while I was there was Seoul Foreign School. So in Seoul itself, there was the military base. So you had to be in the military to go to the school there. There was 2 schools. And then there's Seoul Foreign and Seoul International. And then my parents we did an interview in both. And then I picked Seoul Foreign. I leaned towards Seoul Foreign. But the challenge there is Seoul Foreign serviced all the non-Korean citizens in the entire Seoul area.
Yeah.
So I made a lot of friends at school, but all my friends lived like hours away.
Yeah.
Because your bus ride was like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So to get together with friends, I mean, my parents had to basically allow me to, get in a cab and go, by myself. And I was 14, freshman, I think. Freshman's 14. So you're 14 years old, get in a cab in a foreign country, can't speak the language.
Yeah.
I got lost a few times because I mispronounced things. So I had somebody write them down to show when I need to go somewhere. But it was hard. I mean, you can't just finish school, come home, call your friend up and go play outside. It wasn't like that. So, I had to, we played together, but me and my sister are like 8 years apart. So so didn't really play with her that much. And my brother's still 5 years younger than me, so at that age, that was a big difference. So it was hard. It was very hard to get adjusted to it. Um, and living on there, even though we did live right next to the military base, and I got to, somebody had snuck me on a few times, which is kind of scary to think that a high schooler can sneak on, but
once you have that U.S. passport, you could do anything you want.
Yeah,
Okay?
I guess. But it was a piece of America.
Yeah.
You saw grass, you saw homes, you saw street lights, you saw everything that you feel like you would see in the U.S. was on there. It was really weird.
Yeah.
You walk over like that, and it's almost like you're in a different country.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody on the streets and going to the store, everyone speaks English. So, if maybe I could have gone on the military base more often, it would have eased a little bit of the pain because it makes you feel like a little bit of home. But it was hard.
Yeah.
But looking back, I would not have taken it back. Like, if I could do it all over again, I would do it.
Yeah.
I would do it. It was a great experience living in a foreign country for 2 years, or living in a foreign country, period.
Yeah.
Something else. And I encourage anybody, if they have an opportunity like that.
Then that kind of leads me on to the second part of my question. What was then the spiritual experience like? Because, even back in the day, there wasn't that many churches, but there was something, But in Korea, there was nothing,
Yep.
So I guess what did you guys do to, supplement the church, and then, or were you guys able to, or what was that experience like?
So we went to Korea late 80s. I think it was 89 is when we went to Korea. So 89 to 91. At that point, we moved into this church, not the extension or the other stuff, just the St. Mark's part, right? So we had just moved into that church. The service was, I would say, was blooming for the size of the church that we had. We had Nedwa, we had all sorts of 3-day camps, all of that stuff, and things I remember. So it was really good, and we hung out. Like, I would hang out with my friends from church more than I would from school. Actually, I don't even recall hanging out with friends in school. It was it was all the time with church friends.
Yeah.
When we moved to Korea, obviously all that's gone.
Yeah.
All that's gone. Even the friends you make from school, like I said, hour, 30 minutes. It's a cab ride. You cannot. It's not in the same neighborhood or nearby or 20 minutes away, or 15 minutes away. So, so my dad, for the first 6 months that he was there, was looking around, where could we go for church?
Yeah.
And he did find a Catholic church, which I didn't know until afterwards, that he told us we went there first. But we went to a Catholic church, and he didn't. He said it was like almost an assembly line. Like you would, you had the Italian liturgy, then you had the German liturgy. Yeah. So, if you were the English liturgy, you were sitting in the lobby waiting until the Germans came out. Then you would go in, and then you'd have to leave. And I don't even recall if there was any sort of Sunday school or anything like that, which I don't think there was anything like that. Yeah. Then what I do remember is the Lutheran church that we went to.
Yeah.
So that Lutheran church, I do remember very well. I was pretty resistant to taking communion. I know that my parents had, got permission from, at the time, the priest here, and making sure that this was okay, that we can take communion, because we're there for, we're not coming back to the States until the following summer.
Yeah.
So no communion for almost a year is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, but I was kind of resistant. I didn't really like it because it's not the Coptic church.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that made me really appreciate what we have here. Made me really think about not just my friends here, the services that you miss, the Sunday school. We all complain about going to Sunday school.
Yeah.
But when you don't have it, it's something different.
Yeah.
And we didn't have it. We didn't have it at all. What I do remember is going to church, and then every Sunday after church, my dad would take us to the Burger King, I think it was, right after, and that was our Sunday lunch, and that was the tradition. We go to the Lutheran church, we take communion, which is still very strange to me how the communion is administered, but we took communion, then we went to Burger King, and it was fun. It sounds dumb, but it was fun because it was the five of us.
Yeah.
So we got to hang out a lot, but it was hard. It really makes you appreciate. And I remember over the first off, my parents knew I had a really hard time with it.
Yeah.
So they would have me, call my friends here in the U.S. every once in a while, just check in, how you doing, all that. But that was, it's a 5-minute phone call. And I had some moments where I was kind of just depressed, lonely, didn't want to do anything, just sat. And so they would try to do something like that.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, when it came to the summer, man, all I could look forward to was the week-long convention, the 3-day camps.
Yeah.
And I would make sure, or really ask my parents, when we come, we have to make sure that we're not leaving before any of that, the 3-day camp and all that stuff. So, because that was it. I missed it. And I attended Sunday school during the summers that I was here. And so, I enjoyed every bit of that summer. And then, of course, we had to go back. And it was a little hard. And you know what? After the first year, my parents even came to me and said, "Do we want to do another year?" I was like, "Yeah." I at that point, I was like, you know what? It's kind of interesting,
Yeah.
Let's do another year, and they went with it.
Yeah. And then this also kind of, there's a sub question here as well. Over the course of the pandemic, a lot of people, in fact, everyone for the most part, kind of at one point or another experienced that idea where like we couldn't go to church.
Yeah.
So my question is to you then, over the course of the pandemic, because obviously Korea did teach you, right?
Yeah.
Teach you, hey, how to, I guess, survive without the church, without the lifeline of the church, right? So over the course of the pandemic, did you feel like it was a similar, I don't want to say scenario, but kind of a similar situation, or did you feel like they were two completely different things?
So yes and no.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, there was no 3-day camps. There were no retreats. Nothing. That summer was dead, right?
Yeah.
There was nothing. But we still hung out. Like, once we kind of learned that this was not going away, we still hung out. We still attended liturgy virtually, if nothing else, So, yes, the service-wise, it brought a very similar feeling, but from the perspective of the liturgy, pandemic was better in the sense that I got to see a Coptic liturgy.
Yeah.
Of course, back then in Korea, there's no such thing as virtual streaming or
the internet was like in its infancy at that point.
So it wasn't really something that we could do. But yeah, it's a big miss, and we take for granted. That was another thing. Take for granted what we have. Like, people complain, "Oh, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that." I was like, we have a lot. We have a lot. And if you want something more, start it. The 3-day camp started that way. The mission trip started that way. The international mission trip, the week-long convention, all that started because somebody wanted something more. Another service, and they went with it. The winter retreat. There was no winter retreat when I was growing up here. That's something that started later. I don't know what. The family retreat. All of this stuff. It's great because we do have a lot of people here that want to do something, and that's a great feeling and great to have in your church.
And then that kind of, I've been saying kind of leads on a lot. I don't know why I've been saying that. Sorry about that. But James, edit that out. But that does lead us on to kind of my next question, which is, after Korea, post Korea, when you started serving within the church, did that experience in Korea kind of not only impact the way you serve, but also how you kind of reached out to people and approached, different services? Or,
definitely in Korea, you have to. When we go to the church, we have yes, we all have different personalities, but we're all Egyptians. We have some common characteristics and things that we can deal with, right?
Yeah.
In Korea, it wasn't like that, especially when you went to a school of, Germans and, Spanish and French and, all these different people from different places all over the world, even Japan and all that. You have to kind of adapt to, who they are in order to mix with them and stay friends with them and hang out. So there was a lot of that. When, coming back here, that does play a role in how, because right now our church was small before, now it's big.
Yeah.
We have people that are, new coming from Egypt with a different culture. You have people that were born there, came young. We have people that's like my generation that, was, although it's not me, but born here or came when we were really young. So you have a mix of different generations, and you kind of have to appeal to the different things, the different backgrounds to be able to serve.
Yeah.
It can't be just your way.
Yeah.
So that did play a role. Also, the types of service, right? It's, I miss that every summer.
Yeah.
So I knew, there's things I wanted to be a part of. And one of the things I started my service was Sunday school.
Yeah.
So I started teaching in Sunday school. I moved from teaching the younger age to the fellowship. And I didn't find my niche there. That wasn't my niche. It wasn't until I started serving the high school mission retreat and the college kids and things like that I started to feel that was my niche. And that's the thing that you kind of have to find is some people get discouraged. I did the service, Sunday schools tends to be the common service that everybody does, right?
Yeah.
You finish high school, you're in college, let's teach. Right? And that's great. But if it's not your thing, something will be. You just got to find that niche. And it doesn't have to be anything glamorous. I'll tell you, I remember every Sunday downstairs in this church, downstairs, when we finished Sunday school, we were leaving, there was an elder gentleman who always cleaned the bathrooms. And he would go in the guy's bathroom, he would clean it all, he'd go in the girls, he'd clean it all. This is after everybody left. So this is like 2 or 3 o'clock. And I thought he was just hired help. I found out he was a surgeon, but that was his service. So I was like, not just, it was so humbling. And that's what I'm saying. Service is anything. It's anything from cleaning to dealing with kids to starting a new service to Sunday school. There's a lot you can serve in this church. You just got to find what works for you. And when you do, you hold on to it. You make it grow, And then when you feel you've grown enough, you look for another one, something to branch off of. And that's what I'm trying to do here. It took me a long time to go from Sunday school to servicing more of the high school and college kids through the mission trip. And now we're looking at trying to start another mission trip. Hopefully, inshallah, with God's grace, something like that can happen, So it's very encouraging, and I want, all I can think of is I want this because I want my kids to continually have some sort of service in this church. From college to young professionals all the way through.
Of course. So this kind of segues then into our outlook question. I like to ask these questions at the end of every interview to kind of give advice not only for my generation, but then future generations who will be watching this later, hopefully. Hi, guys, if you're watching. I might be showing this to my grandkids. I don't know. But anyways, my question for you is, as you said earlier, there's so many different services now in the church. But one of the constant things in each service is outreach and connection, either with people within the service or people outside of the service. And my question for you is, given your experience of kind of being, I guess, disconnected, what advice would you give to people who are trying to learn how to connect with people, right? And furthermore, how then do they not only make the connection, but then maintain the connection?
So I'd probably, first thing I would say is, find the service that you like, the service that connects. Because if it's a service that you're just kind of being forced to, or feeling like it's not your service, you might not create that connection. So I think I think that's an important factor, you know. And once you do that, and you kind of just, you know, it's about being with the kids. So, you know, most of our services for the kids. We do have adult services, adult Bible studies, and like that. You know, I'm not at that, you know, senior age yet to be involved in that, so I can't speak there. But most of our services with the kids, and you know, it's about being with them during the service that you're doing, as well as being with them outside of that service, right? So hanging out with them, you know, having them over or going and connect with them. That's not necessarily specific to the service that you're dealing with, because that relationship is important. If you build that relationship, the connection becomes a lot easier. So that would probably be my two things: is find the service that you like, and then make sure you're connecting with them outside of that service too, that age group. That you know, be that. I don't want to say role model, but be that person that they can tap into if they need something, want to look at something, you know, ask something, things like that. So, you know, that relationship is important. And that'll make the service a lot easier, and that connection really strong.
And then
that's a lot easier said than done. And I admire the Sunday school teachers who go and do the visits. I never did that. So, you know, I can tell you that works. When my kids get those visits, they like it, you know, so it's really good.
But then that also kind of adds an additional question. What happens if there's resistance to that connection, you know?
I mean,
what do you do with that?
You can't force, right? You have to just be there. Right. So when there's resistance, and there's always going to be some kids that, you know, don't want to do, like, none of the kids want to go to Sunday school. Right. So you can't force it. The parents force them to go to Sunday school, right? And that needs to be the job of the parents. The Sunday school teachers will encourage them to go to Sunday school, but everybody comes around. You know, it's being there. If you build that relationship outside of it, it's a little bit harder for them to say no the next time Sunday school starts, and, you know, and they're being called for it. But, you know, and I say that nobody wants to go to Sunday school. I'm just, you know, that's not really the case. You know, kids, a lot of kids do, some kids don't, but they all see the benefit later. I did. I did, especially when I didn't have it anymore. But that's what I would say to those that are either resistant or, you know, not really sold on what you're trying to do. Give it time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this interview. Thank you so much for coming. This has been amazing. But before I send you guys away, I do have some quick shout outs to give. First of all, if you want any updates on this show or any other shows we're doing, feel free to follow us on Instagram at smcc.official at instagram.com. There you will see updates about this show, as well as our show Breakdown, which I'm actually hosting. Well, by the time this comes out, it will be after the fact, but I'll be hosting this week's Breakdown, so feel free to go check that out. And if you also want to see updates on new shows, which is something we just introduced, which is Scrapbook. That was the worst transition possible. Anyways, which Scrapbook is a sketch comedy series developed by the high school youth here in St. Mark's. And it essentially is taking funny stories and events that happen within the church and then reenacting them through sketches, which is a great way to kind of impose those memories of, you know, from like Theory Camp 1972 or something like that. But they also do like original sketches as well. And the first episode is out and on the channel. So it's actually a Shay with Amos, I guess, spoof, for lack of a better term. So they didn't have the mugs in the episode. You forgot to give it to them.
I was just plugging the Shay with Amos.
Oh, thank you.
Is that the one that I saw the pilot for?
That's the one you saw the pilot for.
Very good. Yes. Very good. Encourages watch.
Yes, it's hilarious. They wrote everything, and they filmed it, and they acted and everything. So really cool. So there will be new sketches beginning of every month. This episode, the Stray with Albums will be at the end, last Sunday of every month. Sorry, and then the beginning and the first Sunday of every month will be Scrapbook. Otherwise, though, that's all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching, and God bless and good night. Thank you again, Tamer, for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No problem, and everybody, God bless and good night.